Do you realize that your best defense against the coronavirus and COVID-19 is your own immune system? Think about it. Without any effective treatments or a sure cure right now, the best thing we have is our own immune system to fight this off. In this video, I'm going to teach you ways to boost your immune system, making it more effective, potentially against any viral infection. But before I talk about that, I want to dispel the myth that taking immune-boosting supplements will cause a cytokine storm in your body if you contract the coronavirus that causes COVID-19. After explaining some basic ways the virus works inside your body, I'll teach you ways you can boost your immune system, potentially protecting yourself from this virus. So for the first part of this video, let's go to the whiteboard. Okay guys, here comes the fun part. Now, I'm not going to get real detailed into how the virus actually gets into the cell because I want to talk about what happens after the virus is in the cell. And this will help you understand why certain supplements and nutritional interventions can help you boost your immune system to fight this thing off, and really any viral infection. So this is a cell, okay, and you're going to have this virus. Hopefully you won't have this virus, but if you do, here it is, right? This little baby outside your cell. It got into your body. Now keep in mind, when a virus is outside of anybody's body, or a host, in other words, it doesn't do anything. So in other words, if this virus was on your countertop, it's not replicating itself or doing anything. It doesn't have any activity. It just sort of exists until it dies. Now, if it gets in your body, okay, it's going to get into your cell, and you might have seen videos about the ACE2 receptors, but I'm not going to talk about that. Let's just assume it's already inside one of your cells or many of your cells. What happens inside this cell to create this, chaos that can sort of get out of control and progress to ARDS and then in some cases, fatality, death? So what happens is it hijacks your genetic information, basically. So now that it has a host and it's inside a cell, it can actually use your own constituents, your proteins and your genetic information to start producing its own proteins, okay? So basically, it will do that first. Once it's inside, it starts producing what are called viroporins. Now, viroporins are just simply proteins of the virus. This virus starts making proteins of its own and putting them out into your cell. Now, the specific proteins produced, not that you need to know this, are OF3A and E. Okay, so these are the two types of viroporins that this specific virus produces. Now, the thing about those specific viroporins is they activate from here an inflammasome. Now, the inflammasomes in your body, okay, determine what type of cytokines you're going to produce. So not all cytokines are pro-inflammatory. Some are anti-inflammatory. And it depends on which inflammasome is activated in your body, which cytokines will be produced. So the viroporins, these specific ones, trigger the activity of an inflammasome. In this case, the inflammasome is NLRP3. I cannot draw very well all the time, or write very well. Anyway, that's NLRP3, okay? Now, this specific inflammasome, unfortunately, generates pro-inflammatory cytokines. Two predominant cytokines in this disease are IL-1, interleukin 1B, and interleukin 6. This baby right here, IL-1B, this guy's pretty important because what happens with IL-1B is lots of inflammation, and it can even trigger, IL-1B can trigger hypoxia, okay? So this is the whole idea. When people progress, they start having lower levels of oxygen saturation in their red blood cells, okay? So their oxygen saturation goes down. What ends up happening, why people are calling it a cytokine storm, is for this reason, all right? If this virus gets into your cells, right, and you have a strong enough immune system to slow this stuff down, okay? Because once it starts making viroporins, you've got to start fighting back, okay? You've got to attack stronger then it can keep making these proteins, because these proteins not only are going to trigger the inflammasome, NLRP3, and then increase the production of all these inflammatory cytokines, it's going to also allow it to replicate itself. So the viral porins also play a big role in replication. So as it keeps replicating itself, it can start getting into more cells and doing this over and over and over. So what happens is, if you don't have a strong immune response to this virus, it kind of starts winning the battle, so to speak. And because the nature of it is to produce large amounts of interleukin 1b and IL-16, interleukin 6, which is also pro-inflammatory, there's large amounts of inflammation building up very rapidly. Once you get to a point where, hypoxia has set in and other things have set in, that you really, you're losing the battle. Like I said, it's almost like you start getting outnumbered. So yes, there is massive cytokine production going on, but it's not because your immune system is failing. It's because this virus is literally telling your body to produce an inflammasome, activate it, and then thereby produce inflammatory cytokines. In other words, your immune system is literally doing exactly what it's being told to do. The problem is, it's the virus that's sort of controlling the way your immune system is reacting. Now, that doesn't mean it's impossible to defeat. It's not impossible to defeat. Obviously, if it was, 80% of the people wouldn't have just mild cases. And it's important to remember, even in people with pre-existing conditions or elderly people, that doesn't mean you're going to have a critical or fatal case. Okay, looking at the numbers based on China's cases, since they were the first one to have, thousands, tens of thousands of cases, when we look back, we see that even people 80 years and older, 15% died. Now, compared to other age groups, 15% is a lot. But think about that. That means of the people who were 80 years or older, 85% of them survived. So this isn't like doomsday. I know this seems, but I just wanted you to get an idea of why people might refer to this as a cytokine storm. I rather refer to it as a mimicking of a cytokine storm, because again, there's no haywire. There's no really, unusual activity going on in the immune response. The immune response is perfectly normal based on the biochemical constituents that are being released in the cell. And that can take a long time. This doesn't happen like instantaneously. That's why most people can fight this off. And again, even with pre-existing conditions, just because you have a pre-existing condition doesn't mean you're going to progress to this state. However, like I've been saying, a stronger immune system is going to give you a much better chance of getting rid of this baby and keeping it from taking over and winning the battle. And if you're enjoying the content of this video, remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. Now let's look at ways to boost the immune system. All right, so to start off, we're just going to mention some good habits you can take up right now to improve your overall health and your immune system. First of all, you should be eating as many whole foods as possible. This is a great time to switch to a whole foods diet. That means fruits, vegetables, clean meats from animals raised, in natural environments and humanely raised, not eating genetically modified grains, okay? And that also includes nuts and seeds. Those are whole foods. Eat lots of fruits and vegetables. The best way to get vitamins and minerals is from foods that contain the bioflavonoids and polyphenols that work with them. So this would be in the fruits and vegetables. If you remove pro-inflammatory foods, that would go a long way in improving your health and increasing the energy your other metabolic pathways have, particularly your immune system to fight off diseases. So removing gluten, any foods high in added and refined sugars. In fact, even if you use natural sugars like maple syrup or honey, remember, use them in moderation, even stevia, moderation. You don't want to inundate your body with sugar. We do that far too much in the United States, trust me. So just remove as many processed foods as possible. Eat as clean as possible. Like I said, this goes a long way in reducing oxidative stress and, saving wasted metabolic energy that otherwise would be used for detoxification purposes. So buy organic vegetables and fruits whenever you can. And of course, if you do eat packaged food, try to get non-GMO products. This will remove any exposure to glyphosate in the body. And some things you can do that aren't related to eating, practice stress-reducing activities every day. This is a great way to give the immune system a boost. So breathing techniques, meditation, my favorite, yoga, which I practice every day, and any regular exercise of moderate intensity. You know, don't overdo it. Overdoing it actually will be detrimental. So exercise is great for everyone right now. Now, before I get into the vitamins, I'm going to start with vitamin D. This is an exceptional vitamin, and it is estimated that 40% of Americans have vitamin D deficiency. So I do want to point out that some of the information I'm about to give you comes from 3 of the country's most prestigious clinical practitioners, because I had the opportunity to sit in on a private webinar that was hosted by Dr. David Brady, Dr. Todd Lepine, and Dr. Peter Diadamo. So some of the information comes from them. But before I start, I also want to just put out the standard disclaimer that this information is for educational purposes only. You know, it's shouldn't be used to treat, prevent, cure, or diagnose any disease, and it definitely should not be used to replace the advice of your medical doctor, okay? And of course, if you choose to start any kind of supplements, you should always check with your doctor before starting any new supplement regimen. So let's get into it. Now, there are dozens of studies that show vitamin D offers protection from viral infections. It has a number of functions in the body. You could write a book on vitamin D. I believe people have written books on vitamin D, but one of its functions includes immunomodulation. This means vitamin D helps to control the immune response in a balanced way, to keep it from overreacting one way or the other, which could be very important during viral infections. And if you know your levels are below 30, I recommend supplementing with 10,000 IU a day for about 4 weeks to get your levels up to what I call normal. Now, understand, for functional nutritionists and functional medical practitioners, normal is 50 or above to experience the maximum health benefits. Many doctors think 20 or above is okay. Some now are using 30. However, even if you spend a lot of time in the sun, if you're like me, you have trouble producing vitamin D. I spend tons of time in the sun. I'm light-skinned. For all intents and purposes, I should be able to produce lots of vitamin D in the sun, but for some reason I don't. I have trouble keeping my levels around 40. So I do supplement with vitamin D, and many people need to, because it's very difficult to get from foods. We get vitamin D because we fortified foods with it, and it's usually dairy products. So if you're like me and you don't eat a lot of dairy, you may not be getting enough. Now, if you know your levels and you know you don't need it, then don't take it, and you don't necessarily have to take it anyway. But again, a lot of people could use extra vitamin D, particularly strict vegans on a low-fat diet could be potentially deficient also in vitamin D. So because they're usually avoiding the dairy products also that would be fortified. So it's best taken after a meal that contains fat. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. You cannot absorb fat-soluble vitamins without fat. So like if you had a salad with olive oil, or if you did have a serving of full-fat dairy, even something with avocado or nuts in it, all those foods contain fat. Taking vitamin D with that meal or directly after is always a great idea. If you have decent levels but you want to raise them or make sure you maintain them, then 2,000 IU a day is probably going to be enough. I personally take on average 5,000 a day, simply because, like I said, I'm a person who has trouble keeping levels up. I may have a genetic disposition that's causing that. I don't really know. I've never been tested, but not for genetics anyway. It's, the dosage can vary, and it's not going to harm you if you go to 5,000 a day, and it won't even most likely harm you if you go to 10,000 a day for a minimal time. Now, Dr. Todd Lepine pointed out that there's some articles going around saying you shouldn't take vitamin D because it interacts with the ACE2 receptor and blah, blah, blah. All of this stuff about how the virus acts on the ACE2 receptor. Well, from a clinical standpoint, he said there's really no evidence to show that there's any reason to avoid supplementing with vitamin D if you need it. In fact, he did point out that he has used in his clients with viral infections massive doses of vitamin D, much higher than 10,000 IU, and he's used it on himself and has seen literally great effects where the intensity of symptoms and duration of the flu infection were greatly reduced. So, great vitamin. Now, vitamin C is not a vitamin that you're going to be deficient in, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because it does have a couple of things that might be particularly good when fighting specifically a COVID-19 infection. So it's readily available in many fruits, and of course we all know oranges and other citrus fruits like lemon and limes. So it's destroyed by heat. You might want to keep this in mind. So vegetables that include vitamin C, if you cook them, the vitamin C will get destroyed. But vitamin C supports nitric oxide production, and it's also an important antioxidant. What's interesting about this is that increased nitric oxide let me find my mouth. Okay. Increased nitric oxide production and lower oxidative stress can inhibit the activation of NLRP3 inflammasome. So that's pretty important when fighting this particular virus. And as far as dosage, I know there's many articles and there's even scientific literature about intravenous doses of vitamin C, these mass mega doses, okay? Now, they may actually be using intravenous vitamin C on some of the hospitalized patients with COVID-19, believe it or not. But here's the thing. You do not want to take supplement dosages that high. It's not going to do you any good. Intravenous vitamin C and mega doses of vitamin C are only effective in people who have certain health conditions. So in other words, there's something wrong with you already, all right? If you take mass doses and you're otherwise healthy, you actually can do much more harm than good. So when you're using vitamin C supplements, another thing to keep in mind is if you take a dose like 1,000 milligrams or 2,000 milligrams all at once, you absorb far less. How far less? Well, it's like maybe up to 20% you would absorb from a large dose, where a small dose like 250 milligrams, you'll absorb about 90%. That's how much difference it is. So it's not a good idea to massive dose with vitamin C. What you want to do is take small doses. I usually recommend 250 milligrams twice a day. That's a great boost for anybody. But you could do 500 milligrams twice a day and also get a good boost, and that's certainly not going to harm you in any way, shape, or form. And this can be particularly good for smokers because smokers do use more vitamin C than non-smokers. So moving on, vitamin B complex. I always tell people, don't just take one B vitamin because the B vitamins work synergistically in the body. They really interdepend on one another in the metabolic pathways. So vitamin B12 and folate specifically are important for immune cell formation, and they're also indirectly related to detoxifying the body. And that's because they maintain proper balance of homocysteine and methionine. And those products play a role in producing cystathionine, and that is required for glutathione production. Glutathione, if you don't know, is considered like the mother of all antioxidants. So all of the other B vitamins play important roles in energy production. Energy levels in metabolic pathways play a strong role in how well all of your systems will function, including your immune system. A vitamin B complex that you find in any store or online is going to have different formulas. You'll notice which B vitamins are included, and maybe a little additional minerals might be in there. It's going to differ. I recommend just finding a formula with at least 100 micrograms of vitamin B12, and if you're 50 or over, or a strict vegan, you are at risk for vitamin B12 deficiency. So at least find one with 50 micrograms of B12, at least 50 micrograms. Now, the reason people 50 and over are at risk for vitamin B deficiency is because at that age we reduce the production of intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is needed to absorb vitamin B12. So it's always a good idea to use a B complex supplement if you're age 50 or over. I personally use Integrative Therapeutics. No, I'm not getting paid by them to mention them. I don't have nearly enough subscribers. You might have noticed that, okay? I just use this because I really like their formula, and it's a good quality supplement. It's Integrative Therapeutics Active Vitamin B Complex. All right, zinc. Oh, one of my favorite minerals. Now, keep in mind, this is the last vitamin or mineral I'm going to mention before we get into botanical supplements. But keep in mind, there's tons of vitamins and minerals that are related to the immune system, okay? And you could probably really trace back any of them to some link to the immune system, because all the systems in the body are interconnected. But the big players are vitamin A, C, D, E, B2, B6, B12, folic acid, beta-carotene, iron, selenium, and zinc. And I really love zinc for preventative effects on colds and flu, because there are multiple studies showing how effective this is against coronaviruses that cause cold and flu. And several studies used in elderly populations in nursing homes even showed effectiveness to not only reduce the incidence of cold and flus, but also reduce the intensity of the symptoms and the duration. So for older populations, this is a great supplement. It's best used as a preventative supplement before symptoms are present, but you could also start at the very first sign of symptoms. It can be taken and should be taken on an empty stomach to avoid competitive absorption from other minerals. So the metals in the body, you know, the minerals are metals like zinc, calcium, magnesium, manganese, copper, okay? These all compete for absorption if you eat them all at once, or if you take supplements with all of them in them. So I take 15 milligrams of zinc myself every day, and I've had issues actually with zinc deficiency. So, but 15 milligrams is more than enough, I think, to boost someone's level for this purpose, for, you know, extra protection against colds and flus and viruses. So 15 milligrams to 30 milligrams. And that keeps you well under any dosage that would create problems with other minerals inside the metabolism. Well under. But you're still going to get some from your food depending on what type of diet you eat. So again, processed foods are offering very little vitamins and minerals compared to the whole foods and clean meats. Keep that in mind. Don't go over 30 milligrams. It's just not necessary. All right. Melatonin. This was an interesting thing brought up by Dr. David Brady. Now, melatonin is normally something, it's not a botanical actually, it's a hormone, and you can supplement with it. But it's normally taken by people who have trouble sleeping. Instead of a sleeping pill, they recommend 3 milligrams of melatonin an hour or two before you sleep. And it's very effective in a lot of people. So if you have sleep problems, that's something you could try. But here I just list 1 milligram for the purposes we're talking about, because even if you did just 1 milligram, you should take it before bedtime, and that'll stay in sync with the natural biorhythm. So our natural biorhythm with melatonin is we release the maximum amount at night during sleep, okay? And interestingly, what Dr. Brady brought up is that there's studies that were done on animals, mice specifically, that show melatonin combined with a melatonin agonist decreased ventilator-induced lung injury in mice. Now, it was an animal study, but that's very interesting because science also tells us that melatonin prevents activation of NLRP3 inflammasome. So that could be very important if you're trying to fight off a infection of COVID-19. So another thing that was pointed out is, if you think about it, children produce far more melatonin levels than older people. So the production drastically decreases with age, and this might be why children, for the most part, are not really developing any, or not even any, severe cases of COVID-19. I think there's been some rare cases where it happened in children, but for the most part they're not. And also, even in the older population, more males are getting it than females, and females actually retain more melatonin in older age than males. So there could be something to this. Now, this is not a supplement I would go out and start taking for prevention. However, if I did know that I had the coronavirus that causes COVID-19 and I started developing the cough and stuff, this is something I would personally probably keep on my radar to try. Okay, botanicals. Andrographis. This is a herb used in traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years. It provides antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant effects inside the body. I believe it was Dr. Peter D'Adamo that brought this up, and I don't currently use it. I am thinking about adding it to my repertoire of supplements that I personally take, but it does have good actions that could help you fight the virus before and after it gets inside the cell, because it can potentially prevent viruses from binding to the cell in the first place. And it does this by interfering with the cleavage binding mechanisms that the virus uses. So this could really be helpful, and if you get any of this, just take it as directed on the bottle. I unfortunately can't recommend a brand. Like I said, I haven't researched the different brands and I don't use it myself, but take it as directed on the bottle and you should be fine. All right. Stinging nettle, this is something I have added to my repertoire, and this is something you get in tea form. So nettle, it might not say stinging nettle, but it will be from the stinging nettle plant. It's also used in traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years. Of course, anything used in TCM has been used for thousands of years because it's been around for thousands of years. Chinese medicine, of course, one of the oldest medical systems in the world. And it is said in Chinese medicine to nourish, stinging nettle, and all nettles are said to nourish the body's jing. So you might have heard of qi and yin and yang. Jing is considered the essence or vitality of the body, and stored, I believe it's the kidney, and it should be nourished. So one way to nourish it is with nettle. And you want to look for teas containing like 2,000 milligrams from nettle leaf. This reduces cytokine release and lowers inflammatory markers. So again, something great for both really preventative, because it could potentially lower any chronic inflammation you deal with now, and also during an infection. And I always recommend traditional medicinal brands. For all my teas, I use traditional medicinals. These teas don't have caffeine, by the way, so you don't have to worry about any issues with caffeine. They're herbal, teas, and it was Dr. Peter Lepine, I believe, who said, I'm sorry, Dr. Todd Lepine, I got his name wrong, Dr. Todd Lepine, who said he's drinking 2 cups a day right now. So I said, well, if he's drinking it, maybe I should just give it a try. And, believe it or not, functional nutritionists and naturopathic doctors and all of us who are into this functional nutrition and functional medicine way of healing, we really do use our own knowledge on ourselves all the time, trust me, to stay healthy. We really do. So I'm not drinking 2 cups a day, but I use other teas, and other teas you could use include echinacea and elderberry. And again, traditional medicinals is what I use. These are great for prevention of cold and flus and any viral infections. So I sort of mix them up. I might have nettle one day, echinacea another. Sometimes I'll do one of each. So I'll have 2 cups a day, but 2 different types. All right, moving on to thymosin peptides. Something I found really fascinating. I wasn't familiar with thymosin peptides. Something that Dr. Todd Lepine also was involved in. He's like really up on this research. This research, a lot of it is brand new, and it's sort of an up and coming thing right now in functional medicine. So thymosin peptides, if you do choose to take them, just take them as directed on the package and you'll be fine. You want to specifically look for thymus peptides in the ingredients or thymosin peptides in the ingredients. Those specific words. Why? Because there's other supplements out there that offer support for the thymus. The thymus actually controls the immune system function, okay? So you might see thymus powder or other support for the thymus, but it won't be equivalent to products using thymus peptides, okay? It's not going to be the same thing. These could be most beneficial in those with existing conditions or people age 60 or older, just because thymus function drastically decreases as we get older. Again, this might be another reason why children aren't largely affected by this specific coronavirus. You can take these, like I said, as directed on the package. The downside is they can be expensive for a quality supplement. So when you find one, if you search online, if you find one that actually is the peptides, you're going to look at it and see that like 20 capsules cost you $55, $60. That's not something that's really affordable for everyone. I understand that. This is not something I would take myself. Perhaps if I was infected, maybe I would try it. But if you do have pre-existing conditions or you are an elderly person, it might be worth a try. There's like a loading phase for the first 10 days, and then you just take them as a maintenance. And it explains this on the packages. So it's something you could consider. Again, remember, always, check with your doctor for different supplements to make sure they'll be safe. These are all over-the-counter products. Generally, they're going to be safe for just about everyone, but again, this is educational purposes. What you do with the information is up to you, but it's educational purposes only. I cannot make any recommendations for anyone watching this video because I do not know your current medical condition and what would be best specifically for you. So just a couple of honorable mentions before I wrap it up. Quercetin, this is a very powerful antioxidant, also supports a healthy GI tract by maintaining the integrity of the tight junctions in the gut. And quercetin, of course, has been shown to have protective effects in the lungs, so it could particularly be good for smokers. One thing about it, though, is it's very hard to absorb. So the bioavailability is very low when you take a supplement, and that means it usually has to be taken often, like in small doses, twice, 2 to 4 times a day, and for long periods of time before you actually get the effects, the health benefits out of it. So to start it now, maybe it wouldn't be worth it, but it's something to keep in mind. And resveratrol, of course, this is what you get from red wine. Now keep in mind, drinking a bottle of red wine every day is going to counteract the effects, okay? That's too much. 1 glass of wine a day for a woman, 2 for men. So hopefully you found this helpful. I just want to put the disclaimer out one more time. This information is for educational purposes and should not be used to prevent, cure, diagnose, or treat any disease. The information should not replace the advice of your medical doctor, okay? And while over-the-counter supplements are generally safe to use, it is always best to check with your doctor before starting a new supplement regimen. Thank you everyone for watching. Remember, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, love yourself enough to eat whole foods. Eat real food.